that could decide the election.
More than 80 million Americans have already cast their ballots in this year's election, and tonight there are new signs of momentum for Vice President Kamala Harris. But neither side is taking anything for granted in the waning hours of this unprecedented election cycle. Our coverage tonight begins with Laura Barone-Lopez.
In a mad dash to the finish, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump rallying their supporters tonight to get out and vote.
Here's my only purpose in even being here today. Get out and vote. You know that.
Are we ready to do this? We're ready to get out the vote. We're ready to win.
Trying to convince any remaining undecided voters to come to their side. Most national polls show the race in a dead heat, but there are some signs that voters may be opting for Harris. The latest PBS News NPR Marist poll shows Harris up 4 points against Trump among likely voters nationally. It's the first time she's shown a lead greater than the margin of error. Harris even appears to have a slight lead in decidedly red Iowa. The final Des Moines Register Mediacom poll shows Harris ahead by 3 points among Iowa voters.
Momentum is on our side. Momentum is on our side. Can you feel it? We have momentum, right?
You know, they have an expression, I hate the expression actually, but it's ours to lose.
Both campaigns are engaging in an all-out battleground blitz today. Former President Trump fanning out across 3 states with 2 stops in Pennsylvania. But Vice President Harris is holding every single one of her 5 final events in the Keystone State, the biggest electoral college prize of the swing states.
We need everyone in Pennsylvania to vote because you are going to make the difference in this election. So here's how I think about things. We are all here together because we love our country. And when you love something, you fight for it.
Trump and Vance were also out today in North Carolina and Wisconsin.
I'd like to begin by asking a very simple question. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
You don't have to agree with everything that I say, every policy proposal that we have. You don't have to agree with everything that Donald J. Trump says. But what we know is that when Donald Trump was president, you could afford to pay your bills.
It builds on a weekend of campaigning by both candidates at breakneck pace, including media appearances. Vice President Harris popped in for a lighthearted surprise on Saturday Night Live.
Now, Kamala, take my Kamala. The American people want to stop the chaos and end the drama.
For equal airtime, NBC played a 90-second special message from Trump during 2 major Sunday sporting events, a NASCAR race and Sunday Night Football. At a Sunday rally, while surrounded by bulletproof glass, Trump made menacing remarks toward the press.
And I have this piece of glass here, but all we have really over here is the fake news, right? And to get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news. And I don't mind that so much.
Trump's campaign tried to defend the remark, claiming that the former president, who regularly calls reporters the enemy of the people, was actually looking out for the press. And despite running well behind Harris with women voters, Trump laughed when a supporter of his compared the vice president to a sex worker.
She's a significant liar. And when you lie about something so simple, she never worked there. But I did a little bit.
This weekend, Trump also appeared to endorse a proposal to remove fluoride from public water utilities, an idea floated by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who frequently spreads public health conspiracy theories. In the final stretch, Trump has repeatedly said he will put Kennedy in charge of health policy if he wins.
We have a mess on our hands. We got a bunch of cheaters that all they do is think about how they can cheat.
And as Trump lays the groundwork to call the election stolen with baseless claims of cheating, Harris is warning voters that Trump may prematurely claim victory Tuesday night, like he did in 2020.
I would ask, in particular, people who have not yet voted, to not fall for his tactic.
The former president wraps up tonight with a rally in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the same city where he ended both his 2016 and 2020 campaigns. And Harris will hold a star-studded event from the Rocky Balboa Steps in Philadelphia.
With more on the candidates' final sprint to Election Day, let's bring in Laura Barone-Lopez, who's been covering the Harris campaign.
And Lisa Desjardins, who's been reporting on former President Donald Trump. It's great to see you both. So, Laura, we'll start with you. What has been the final message from Vice President Kamala Harris? Have you noticed a shift?
We have noticed a shift. In the final month, Harris was being much more explicit when she was talking about Donald Trump and what she sees as the threats to democracy that he poses, calling him unstable, looking for unchecked power. She was repeatedly quoting former Trump officials like his longest-serving chief of staff, John Kelly, as well as the former Joint Chiefs of Staff. And their words, as they described Donald Trump as fascist and as dangerous. But in her closing remarks, starting this weekend, Harris has not been naming Donald Trump specifically. She's been trying to create more of this unity message, and that is a notable shift. I asked Jen O'Malley Dillon, her campaign chair, about that today, and the campaign chair said that she wants to end with optimism, this theme of unifying the country, that she will be a next generation.
Lisa, what about the Trump campaign's final messages here? Any big shifts now?
As you know, Donald Trump has very many messages most often, but one that they like as their final message is this idea that Harris broke it, Trump will fix it. That does a couple of things when you talk to senior campaign advisors for Trump. They say, first of all, it tries to tag Harris to the Biden administration, but it also leaves a much more vague opening so that any remorse, any grievance that voters have, they will blame on her, whatever it is that's broken. And it also helps with his brand, which of course is a get it done kind of businessman. So they like that message. She broke it, we'll fix it. Something else they're doing in ads, though, is they're focusing on the economy and immigration. And as Laura has been reporting, in some specific markets and online especially, anti-transgender rights commercials. Talking to campaign advisors about what's going on with that, they say they're trying to make up ground that they concede they've lost with women, suburban women, over abortion, and trying to see if that helps. Not clear if it will, but that's part of their final strategy. They do feel like they gained ground earlier this fall. They think the vice presidential debate may have been a turning point for them for momentum. They also like to point out that Harris has not had a traditional news conference, but overall right now, they're trying to portray Harris as someone who's not ready to be president.
Laura, how has the Harris campaign been spending these final days? What are your sources telling you?
Well, the Harris campaign is feeling pretty good about the election right now at this point, Jeff. They point to their expansive ground game, specifically that in the final weekend, they had volunteers knocking on hundreds of thousands of doors across the battleground states. In total, campaign officials said that the campaign has knocked on 16 million doors across the battlegrounds. The bottom line is that Harris's campaign and Democrats are relying big on turnout amongst women, and they're also really hoping that they are going to be getting a bigger margin of those disenchanted Republicans than Joe Biden got in 2020. Those people who voted for Nikki Haley in the primary, those Liz Cheney type Republicans. But when I asked Jen O'Malley Dillon, the campaign chair, today about those remaining undecided fence sitters, she said that the campaign is still consistently seeing them in the final 2 weeks breaking for Harris. And she has in the past specifically noted the Madison Square Garden rally and Trump's rhetoric in the final stretch.
Lisa, how is former President Trump looking at this moment? It was striking to see Vice President Harris say she feels she has the momentum, and he was saying, well, this feels like ours to lose. What does this moment look like to them?
Well, they have an interesting communication strategy. They've gone dark, essentially, with the press. They haven't had a press call in the way that the Harris campaign has. One of them said, if you're spinning, you're not winning. But they still weren't giving me numbers like we have from the Harris campaign on how many door knocks. Part of that is because their get out the vote and canvassing strategy all along has been unorthodox. They have changed the playbook that the Republicans had 4 years ago. It was a roll of the dice. They've been trying to go for low propensity voters, but also from Trump volunteers. Some of them people who've never canvassed before. So it's a question of whether those folks will get out the vote or not. How many doors they've knocked on, we don't know, because they're also relying on a myriad independent groups to get out there on the abortion issue, Americans for Progress, there are many for prosperity. There are many different groups doing this out. One thing that they like right now, the Republicans and the Trump campaign, is the early vote turnout. They like that rural counties have turned out, as we've reported here. They think that that is going to be a boost for them. They admit they don't know. Are those new voters or are those just voters who would have come out anyway? But they think they feel some momentum in the early vote going their way. But, you know, any source that I trust is one who will admit it is very close. They see many paths Trump campaign to winning, but they also admit they don't know.
All right, Lisa Desjardins, Laura Barone-Lopez on the campaign's views before this last day of voting. Good to see you both. Thank you.
Thank you.